We are really attracted to what's familiar. There's like a term, I speak about it on the show. It's called repetition compulsion. We feel compelled to fix something because we've experienced it again. Like if she has been in a home with a toxic marriage, her parents demonstrating that, there may be a compulsion for her to find herself in that narrative to break the pattern because her brain is trying to complete something. Hi everyone, I'm Julie, she's Kelly, and we're here to find love. We're back again this week for another Bachelorette recap. Today we're recapping episode 3 of Jenn's season of The Bachelorette. For those of you who don't know us, we're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows, especially The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. If you're into this kind of stuff, hit the subscribe button to follow along and join the conversation. You can also listen to us in podcast form on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, feel free to be sharing your thoughts in the comments as you're watching. Let's keep the conversation going. We love hearing your thoughts. If you're listening on podcast, shoot us a DM on Instagram while you listen. Get cozy, have a cup of tea. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we are on week 3 of Jenn's season, and it was a pretty typical episode, but we did start off with a one-on-one date, and then we had 2 group dates. We had a one-on-one date with Spencer, who I guess we'll talk about him later when we talk about like our standouts, but that was it was funny. We brought him up last week and we were like, oh, Spencer, like maybe there's something there, and then he got the one-on-one. I was like, oh, okay, here he is, he's here.
My reaction as well, he's just here.
Here he is.
There is the man. Yeah, he has arrived.
We had a larger group date and then a smaller group date, which was interesting. Usually we have like 2 one-on-one dates and then a group date, but we had like a big old group date, which was like a striptease competition, which, by the way, was interesting as a concept. It was, I mean, it was entertaining television. However, I'm always a little bit, when people are forced to like get on stage and like show their bodies, I'm always a little bit like, I don't know, as a forced activity, it's quite a lot to be like, you must now take off all your clothes on national television. And of course, I'm sure they had the option to like opt out, but I'm sure you feel pretty pressured that you have to participate in order to like, be part of the thing. So I bet it's pretty, I mean, we saw that one guy, Sam N, was pretty uncomfortable with the whole activity.
I would be. Yeah.
Right, I would be too. So he was uncomfortable, but he found a way kind of like around it, not having to like strip. But Sam was the only one who said he had a problem with it, but for all we know, maybe some of the other guys were also uncomfortable. So anyways, that was the larger group date, and then we had a smaller group date, which was like a race car date. It was only 4 guys, which is actually like kind of nice to have a 4-person group date. So few people and everyone gets a lot of time with her. But anyways, the main storyline point really of the episode was the conflict between Sam M, Thomas, and Devin. This was kind of like the main thing that was going on. And oh boy, I mean, I had a lot to say about Devin and Aaron last week, but oh my gosh, Sam M and Thomas were crossing a line this week. They really went off the rails.
It's so disappointing because I really supported Thomas N just from the perspective of, here is a Vietnamese American person. I really just want to hear more about his story, and it's so unfortunate that him and Sam M keep making the main thing about Devin and their distaste for Devin than their relationship with Jenn. And they kept bringing it up the entire episode. They just had this mean girl energy, like snickering in the corner by themselves, kind of threatening physical violence and joking about it, the way that Sam M was kind of communicating. Devin might be really smooth with his words, but I'm really smooth with my fists. I was so egged out by their behavior. The level of verbal aggression that they were communicating on the show, I would want to get them thrown off. Or if I knew that was me, if I was the lead and my contestants were interacting like that, I wouldn't want to be around that behavior because it's extremely toxic. It's really unhealthy. And the way that they have all of this weird aggression towards Devin made me like Devin this episode. And of course,
right.
It's like he has a connection with Jenn, but it was just really bizarre to see the way that Sam M and Thomas were interacting and kind of treating all of these other people in the house. I didn't know what happened. I was like, why are you guys so like caught up in this? Like, get over it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Devin's behavior last week. I did feel like he was like kind of intentionally riling up the guys and being kind of
He's a troll.
Aaron, and he was kind of trolling last week, and it was really, I didn't like the way he was like kind of ordering guys around in front of Jenn, pushing Thomas's buttons. But this week, I just felt like Thomas and Sam M just really just went, just completely crossed the line. Sam making those physical threats towards Devin, the like, I'm gonna step on his neck, and then the thing about like, Devin's good with his mouth, but like I'm good with these, and like flexing his muscles or whatever. I was just like, ugh. Signaling that you were willing to get into a physical altercation over these very minor interpersonal disagreements, for me, it's an automatic no. Like, automatically, I'm done. I mean, if I'm being honest, to me, it's literally primitive. It's just such a backwards way of handling conflicts. It's absolutely something I would honestly recommend just avoiding altogether when it comes to dating, because you just really want to be careful with people who deal with their anger or who deal with conflicts by threatening violence, right? Even Thomas, I don't think he quite used any threatening language himself, but he definitely went along with Sam's like humor and threats. And I think there was actually, in the beginning of the episode, there was one flashback of, like, they were flashing back to the conflict from week 2, and one of the flashbacks showed Devin like commenting on the way that Thomas had like put his hands on Devin. Like, Devin mentioned that Thomas put his hands on him, and I don't feel like I had caught that from week 2, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they didn't show it. I didn't catch that Thomas had ever like actually placed hands on Devin. But I mean, that definitely changes the tone of everything, right? If you're, I mean, using physical aggression to make your point, it's a no. And even if that, like, I don't know, we didn't see it, but I think the fact that Thomas is aligning himself with Sam, and then there is just like so much like anger and like aggression in the way that they're having these conversations, to me, I'm just officially off with both of these guys based on what we're seeing here and the stories we're being given. And as always, here on Here to Find Love, we are, we talk about these people basically like fictional characters. We're not trying to guess who they are in real life, like outside of this produced environment, outside of these edited storylines. We're just analyzing these storylines really as given. We're using those as talking points to talk about real life dating themes or real life dating patterns. And in real life, it's like, if there are these kinds of comments, if you hear some of these comments from a guy, I would just honestly just say steer clear. It's just so important to have a partner who knows how to deal with his emotions, his anger, his conflicts, his frustrations, without resorting to threats and physical violence. That's just the last thing that you want. You do not want a man to snap and then accidentally make you the target of that energy, right? And I mean, no one should be the target of that energy. So it's a no for me, a complete no.
Exactly. And you're right, Thomas N is guilty by association by being with Sam. There is something about birds, I don't know that phrase, birds of a feather flock together, or there's just something about familiarity that you're attracted to. I wanted to give Thomas a pass, but just because I have the same background as him does not mean that I'm going to continue to advocate for somebody that has repeatedly demonstrated really antagonistic behavior. I get that he had an argument with Devin. What I noticed, at least the difference, and this is scraping the bottom of the barrel, okay? Like with Devin, at least in the last episode, he was being quite controlling and kind of going overboard and ordering people around. I felt like he was a little bit more, okay, like whatever, you guys do this thing. What I noticed of Sam M and with Thomas N were they continue to internalize the conflict and not let it go. And that is the biggest indication of, whoa, the way that you manage your anger, the way that you're able to move through this almost matters more. Like, we talk a lot about this in conflict management and relationships. The rupture, everybody's going to have rupture. How is the repair? And the repair that Thomas and Sam M, using these initials is like a mouthful.
I know.
It's just like Thomas and Sam, the way that they're kind of interacting and the way that they're continuing to like create more ruptures. And they know Devin is. They don't agree with Devin. He is he's very goofy. He's a troll. He kind of is, I think he uses his banter and his words as a weapon almost, because he knows he can kind of trip people up. He doesn't mind standing up for himself. He doesn't mind pushing people's buttons. If that's who he is, you don't have to revert into like aggressive behaviors to try to match the energy, because you just look really petty. So Sam M and Thomas are just fighting a losing battle against this guy. Like, that's just who Devin is. Why resort to being these baser versions of yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of think that's where Thomas N is, and with Sam M, in my opinion, I don't know if I want to see this kind of guy on TV. I don't know if I want to see this kind of guy around Jenn, especially because she talks about being around so many toxic men who have done the things that Sam M is doing to her. In most of their conversations, let's be real, she is just kissing him. She's so sexually attracted to him that I'm not sure she's really seeing him for who he is. And that is just, I just want to shake her by the shoulders and be like, oh my God, he's exactly the pattern. You have to walk away from that.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I want to circle back to the thing that you said about it's very interesting, the dynamic between Sam, Thomas, and Devin, because I feel like in the first 2 episodes, Sam and Thomas were pretty, whatever. We saw Thomas lose his cool and lose his anger, but he did leave the house, and he was like trying to cool down, and so at least we kind of saw that there was some attempt. But then I think it was the combination of like Devin continuing to push Thomas's buttons, and then Sam also like starting to just be openly aggressive, that like it just like has like everything has gotten worse. It's like by one person like has that behavior and the other person thinks it's okay to go a little further, and the other person thinks it's okay to go a little further, and that's how you get like these like really just like physically charged like interactions. That's just like, and that's why I tend to be a pretty I have a pretty hard line with this stuff. It's like even like a little bits of like passive aggression, it just like allows people like people you let a little bit in, and then suddenly people like think that, oh, it's okay for us to be this way, okay, let's go there. And it's like, well, actually none of it was okay, and like everyone needs to reel it back. You can't respond to Devin's like passive aggressive and at times openly aggressive behavior by being more aggressive than Devin. Like that's not the answer. And I wouldn't say that I think, well, that's just the way Devin is. Like, I don't actually agree with that. I do think that, like, Devin also needs to take accountability for his behavior. But, like, to your point, at this point, like, Sam and Thomas are being so over the top that it's, like, it's not surprising that a lot of people are now starting to side with Devin in this situation, because Thomas and Sam are just going completely over the line. And it's, like, you can't take these frustrations and other people's behavior and turn that into an excuse to also be bad and worse and horrible. Like you can't, don't take someone else's bad behavior and use it as an excuse for you to also do something bad. You need to be able to manage those emotions, and I just feel like Sam and Thomas have really clearly indicated they just can't. And I mean, Devin to me is still indicating that he will not take accountability for anything that he's done, but he's done a lot of other things in this episode that we're going to talk about that have been positive. Versus Sam and Thomas, I'm just like, what is happening? Like, I'm with you. I just kind of like, I don't even really want them around Jenn, to be honest. And we come back to like the way Sam is with Jenn. I agree. Like, at first it was like, haha, kind of cute that they're just making out all the time, but like even in this episode, to me, the way Sam is with Jenn is actually starting to cross a line as well. There was like one part where they were like making out, and he was like kind of like on top of her, and she kind of was like turning her face away and was kind of like telling him to get off of her, and he kind of wouldn't. And I was just like, all right, like now it's to me, it's too much. Like, when I use the word red flag, all I'm referring to is behaviors to look out for in a partner, behaviors to look out for in a relationship dynamic, because those behaviors could be signs that there could be issues if you proceed in a relationship with that person. And this is definitely an example of that, right? It's like, I think regardless of whether or not this interaction was fine by Jenn, I think that for me, it's just something that would make me think twice and be cautious about proceeding to date somebody who is doing this. Because when it comes to your body, when it comes to getting physical with someone, I think you got to take no real seriously. You got to take that no signal and just, as soon as you get the signal, you got to pull back. And I just didn't see that from Sam. And so to me, it's a pretty hard no from me for Sam. Like, I'm pretty off of that.
I'm off him. Yeah, there's no part of me that is interested in seeing any of their scenes, because it seems like he wants to win her more, and there's a conquest feeling to it. It's not, I want to get to know her, I want to respect her. It doesn't feel like this sweet courting. It's really aggressive, and his aggression is on display this episode, the way that he's interacting with the men in the house and the way he's interacting with Jenn, just kind of, do you want to, I want to make you my girlfriend, or no PG tonight. He's just making these like really overt, like the word choicing as well. I'm not a big fan of it, and I was just kind of unhappy to see how the connection was developing. And going back, like during that date where he was, you know, stripping, dancing on her, which I just hated that whole day. I was like, oh, it's not even, it was uncomfortable to see that, you know, Sam N was so uncomfortable, and I was kind of thinking, if I was in that situation, I would hate it to have to show somebody I really like you by taking off my clothes. And I don't know, it just felt like really skeezy to watch. And when Sam M kind of walked away after he did his dance on Jenn, and the other 2 bachelorettes were there, they were like, you have to be careful of him.
Yeah.
I chose somebody just like that, and I felt like Jenn was a little bit excited to first share it with them. Like, ooh, I have so much sexual attention. And they were like, do not choose somebody like that. And it's like Jenn didn't... I think she's just getting so caught up in the excitement, or just, you know, she heard what they said, but then she's around this guy and she's getting such a positive signal from her body that this guy she's gravitating towards him. So I understand from her perspective, and I hope she's checking it with husband material, not fling, honeymoon, excitement, butterfly energy kind of vibe that she's getting from him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What did you think about that, by the way? Because that was a very clear warning that she was being presented with.
Yeah, I mean, at one point they're making out and she's like, there's just something here between us. I don't know what it is, but I really want to like find out. I'm like, do you really not know what it is? It's sex. It's lust. Like,
you just want to have sex with them.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. You guys do have a lot of sexual chemistry, and like, I'm almost like surprised that she cannot like differentiate between those two things. And I mean, I guess maybe there's some off chance that we're not seeing other conversations that her and Sam are having. But to me, I just think that we were both talking about like, oh, this would probably like this kind of date, this striptease date would probably make us uncomfortable. But I actually think Jenn isn't like that. I actually think she would. I think she likes this kind of thing. I think she likes, like, you know, she likes people with big personalities. This gave a chance for all of the men to show, like, their spicier sides. And I think she is a little bit spicy as a person. And so I do actually understand why she would like a date like this, because she doesn't want a Sam N. She doesn't want someone who's, like, nervous. Like, I would also be, like, cowering in the back. She doesn't want someone like that. She wants someone who's going to, like, really lean into it the way Sam and Devin and... you know, other guys like Dylan, there was a lot of guys who like really leaned into it, and I think she really even like Marcus, she was like, ooh, I thought Marcus was just all serious, but now he's here being all sexy and having fun. Like, I think she like is looking for that. She wants someone who will really be bold and have like a big like social persona. I think that's what she wants, and that's really what this date is checking for, right? This date is really checking for, can you lean in and be goofy in an uncomfortable situation? Can you like get a crowd to be excited about you? Like, that's really what the date was about. I get that that's what Jenn is looking for. However, to your point, it's like you need to also balance that with, okay, but like, are these good people? Like, are you actually talking to them? Like, because with Sam, I just don't know what kind of meaningful conversations they've had so far, other than, you bother me.
Yeah. And they both flirt really well with each other. I think that they demonstrate typical, you know, the bar flirting that happens when you meet somebody and you're just like, oh my God, and you're just talking to them and you're just really, you're bantering. They just always have that vibe, and then almost after a few minutes of talking, they would just start making out, and then they would spend most of their time making out.
Is it because they have nothing else to say? Like, what is the deal? Like, I mean,
I feel like it's kind of a little bit of, I mean, and we can go into this when we talk about Jenn, but I was getting to know a little bit more about Jenn and how she opens up and how she expresses vulnerability, and she's learning. But I think where she's most comfortable with is in this banter, drumming up excitement, creating anticipation, presenting this image of herself. I think Sam M is also doing that in a way. So it's almost this perfect storm of really familiar behaviors and sexual tension that must be really intoxicating to get swept up into.
Absolutely.
But I see no connection outside of that really between Sam and Jenn. And I'm curious if any of you guys think so as you're watching this. Like, maybe I feel like the consensus is no, get this man off her screen. Him and Thomas N, let's throw them off. I would want to throw out Devin too, but apparently she likes him, so I guess she's going to continue to keep him around.
My feelings about Devin are so mixed. I'm like all over the place on him. I feel like jury's still out, really. So I'll give him a few more weeks.
Give him a few more weeks. I mean, I'm noticing that a lot of her men are just, I don't know, I don't really see it. I'm just not seeing any connection that besides Devin, and that's kind of surprising to me.
Right. Well, yeah, I would love to know down below what folks are thinking about. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I'm assuming everyone's in agreement that Sam and Thomas are just like, oh, good God. Like,
let's get them off, yeah.
Get them off. I mean, if anyone disagrees, I'd love to know down below. Please, what are you thinking about these two men? Where are we landing? Where are we landing on Devin? Where are we landing? I mean, I do think that Devin showed a lot of positive qualities in this episode. Like I said, I'm still kind of reserving my judgment on him because he was kind of actually reminding me in a way of Kat Izzo from
Zach's
season. My gosh, Zach's season, and on Bachelor in Paradise, like people, I think, really didn't like her. She had like some like moments where she was just like doing these really horrible things to some of the men that she was dating and interacting with, and she would like, I don't know, yell at the camera about people's like mental health and things like that. She would just do these like really just like horrible things, but then in the next scene you'd see her like, you know, Jess is crying and she'll like be the one to come comfort Jess, and like it's like, oh, okay, she's like a good friend, and like all the people on the beach like love Cal. I think in the Batch world people like really love her, and so it's a good reminder that like people really do contain multitudes. We saw a lot of like the bad a lot of behaviors on Kat's part that were not great in terms of like dating and caring about people. We saw a lot of stuff that wasn't great, but then there was like a ton of stuff that was also very positive, and I felt like I was thinking about that as I was watching this episode with Devin, because there's a lot of things that Devin did on this episode that I really appreciated. The one in particular that's sticking out to me was when he stood up for Sam N, the one who had confessed to Jenn on the stripper stage that he is starting to fall in love with her. People had a really poor reaction to that, understandably. We can get into it, but people were not into him using that word so early. But then people started to like kind of like make fun of him for it, and like Sam M and Thomas in particular were like kind of like laughing at him every time he talked. It was like just like such a I mean, the word bullying is getting used very loosely in this episode. However, if anything is bullying, I think it looks closest to what Sam and Thomas were doing to Sam N. And I really felt for Sam N in these moments, because Sam N himself was even trying to like backtrack and like kind of like be like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. And people were kind of not giving him a ton of grace. And I appreciated that Devin did. Devin was like, you don't have to apologize for how you feel. And I thought that was actually like a really good moment for Devin, and to me it really it made me start to see him a little bit differently.
With Sam N, I was feeling a lot of empathy for his situation, and this is just taking his behavior on the show at face value. He was uncomfortable with the date. He wanted to tell Jenn what he felt about her, because that is basically the intention of the date. It's to show how much I put in this performance is how much I care about Jenn. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna use my words. He didn't use the right words. He definitely chose language that was way too early, was way not indicative of his relationship with Jenn. But two things happened. Jenn was okay with it because she felt validated by it. Don't love that for her, but she did. She loved the validation. And then if I was Sam N and I said that, and then all of a sudden a group of people look at me and start whispering and talking, and I say something and people start laughing, I'm sorry, that would feel absolutely horrendous. Yeah. Just like imagine being a kid again, or just that experience when you say something wrong, you do something wrong, you embarrass yourself, and you're not given grace. it's one of the worst feelings to experience. It makes it invites shame. It invites all of this, oh my God, I'm picking myself apart. It could really be an ugly spiral. And I'm glad that Sam N had somebody like Devin, because Devin was clearly, I believe, genuinely bothered by it. And he was almost sticking up for him in a way that I would want someone to stick up for me in that situation. If I had said something, you know, people are laughing at me, I wouldn't feel confident to continue standing and backing up my words and, you know, saying of my chest. I would kind of, okay, I'm time to go in. I need to hide. I need to protect myself. And I liked how Devin immediately after Sam N's speech was like, what you said was okay. And if anybody has a problem with it, that's their own issue. That was really, I think that was a really intelligent way of handling it. Yeah. And very empathetic. So I'm glad we had that showing. So Devin is just a very confusing person all around.
Yeah.
You know, multitudes, you're right.
We could, people contain multitudes. You know, there are things he did last week that I really was like, ugh, I don't know. It's just makes me a little bit cautious of what he might be like in a relationship. However, in this scene, between him and Sam N, I was I really did appreciate the way that he stood up for him, and I that did gain some respect from me for Devin. And I am someone who can be the awkward duck in a group situation, so I really resonated with Sam N in this situation. And I really love it when someone takes me under their wing and kind of helps me feel more secure, more welcomed, or more validated, and so on. So I huge points to Devin for realizing he recognized that Sam N was in that position, was kind of getting ostracized, and kind of didn't really know how to recollect his image. He didn't know what to do, and Devin recognized that and totally backed Sam, and he was like, you don't need to apologize for how you feel. And I thought that was it was beautiful, because, you know, of course, I think we can all acknowledge that, he probably shouldn't have said he's falling in love with Jenn, after they've probably talked for all 15 minutes. Sure, that's true. He should not have done that. It is
wrong words.
It is too soon. But you know what? At the end of the day, I think that, you know, I think it was endearing that Sam N himself even acknowledged that, okay, that was actually a mistake to use that language. It was too soon. He tried to walk it back, and I was like, you know what, that's endearing. That shows a level of self-reflection from Sam N, a level of humility to be okay, I said that, and you know what, I can acknowledge that was a little silly. It actually made me Sam N more too. So, you know, I appreciate that he walked it back. I appreciated that Devin was all right, nobody needs to trash you for this, because you know, you're just trying your best out there. You're just trying your best out there, man.
That moment really brought me back to the times when I was made fun of when I was younger, and I always loved when a confident person that just didn't take shit from people are you're not going to say something to them, and I'm just oh my God, thank you so much. You know, it's that type of feeling. And I mean, we want somebody to show up on our side like that. We want somebody that's I have a thick skin and I'm not going to stand for that. And Devin, you know, his big mouth is a blessing and a curse in ways. Will it rub people the wrong way? Yes. Will he stand up for the people in the group when no one is standing up for them, because they don't want to get in it? They're I want to focus on my connection. This is a guy that will...
He'll get in there.
he'll get right in the middle of it. Every time, expect him there. Yeah, he will be there. So.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And there's pros and cons to it. And you know what? I think you see that in contrast to Sam and Thomas, who wouldn't take Sam N's apology. Sam N it wasn't an apology, but Sam N was even acknowledging you're right, that was goofy for me to say. And then you get Sam M and Thomas are just laughing in the corner about it, and it's just
so
they
awful.
took Sam N's mistake and they're just running with it. They're just continuing to trash him for it, even though he acknowledged that it was a little goofy for him to do it. And to me, that shows a lot of what Sam M and Thomas are really that they won't have that grace for people to just say ugh, I that was a little awkward. I shouldn't have done that. To not have that grace, I'm just what is what do you gain from continuing to trash this man? I mean, I know what it is. They want to look big. They want to look ooh, we're the big dogs in the room or whatever. That's what they want to look like. And I mean, the truth is they just they're just embarrassing themselves by showing like how, you know, cruel they can be. And it's like,
totally,
you know, you're trying to look big and you're just looking cruel and unattractive, honestly. Like, that's all I really got from Sam M and Thomas in this scene. So
you know, as you're talking about this, and this is very much a leap, but I felt like it was almost a demonstration of like how they treat their inner child or how they interact with other people's really deep vulnerabilities, right? Because Devin is like, and he spoke about this. We're going to talk about his comments about his body and growing up, being overweight, and just feeling like, ooh, I just don't like looking at myself in the mirror. There's elements of how he showed up based on that conversation with Sam.
Yeah.
If I do think that is a thing. Like, if you have experienced that level of cruelty, because kids can be mean when kids are young. Kids can be really vicious. It's hard not to want to help someone else in that moment. And I felt like Sam and like, you know, the Sams, the Thomas, the Devin, they were all just interacting with each other, and it just felt very childish because it did feel like this exchange of like inner child communication. And Thomas and Sam M maybe seem like they don't treat themselves the kindest because they're not treating people the kindest, you know. There's like that extension, which it's definitely going a layer deep, but it was interesting to see, like, why not? It takes literally a perspective shift to give somebody grace. It costs nothing to you. It doesn't take any energy from you except to think about something a little differently and to give somebody more expansion than contraction. But they were just like, he sucks. And they were just laughing about it. And I don't even want to do that with like Thomas and Sam as they're being so mean. But I'm like, guys, like, dang, let up. Like, give us there's so much rope, and they just keep like taking it and like tightening it. I'm like, guys. God. Like, the next episode, I was so disappointed to see Thomas and continuing to get into fights. I'm like, dude, it just,
what
like,
is
stop.
happening? I know. Yeah. And you know what? It's like, it does feel like this whole thing felt like a reenactment of like a teenage, like, high school movie drama. Like, you know, like,
it did.
Kid getting picked on by the like, cool kids. But it's like, you know that those cool kids are like
bullied you at home.
It's just like, it felt like such a reenactment. It was so funny. And then Devin swooping in there as like the kind of like, you know, quirky but like confident guy who like swoops in and defends the awkward kid. You know, that's what that felt like, right? Like this whole
No, it totally did. You saying that just cracks me up because it's so true. It was like a cafeteria drama, and Jenn is the homecoming queen. She just walks by and sees it, but she's like, she says a few lines and she just walks away, you know, like.
No, you're totally right. And you know what I will say, because you did mention, we're talking about Grace, and like, you know, with Sam M and Thomas, like, one thing that I will say is, like, this isn't to say that, you know, people can't heal and change, right? Sometimes people, because you're right, I bet Sam M and Thomas are like that because they probably experienced some bullshit themselves, and they, like, have learned that the only way to get acceptance from a group is to present this bravado and to like be this like hyper masculine blah 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 blah, and to hunt down any signs of like weakness from other people and put those people down so you can look big. They've probably learned that probably from like, I don't know, whatever, like their own parents or their own peers, you know. They've learned that behavior and have internalized it, and when you look at it that way, then you can start to have empathy. I'm literally just thinking back to Taylor Swift's song Mean.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
it's so true. It's so true.
The truth, right? But it's like at some point, like, someone's got to be the cycle breaker here, right? Someone's got to just stop the bullshit. Just because you experienced bullshit growing up doesn't mean you got to keep reenacting it with other people. And so you got to figure out how to cut that off. And so what I would say about Sam M and Thomas, this is not a condemnation of them forever, for all of time. Like, I hope that they can heal, figure out what happened, figure out why they behaved this way or why they have historically behaved this way, and figure out like what it looks like to grow into, you know, kinder versions of themselves. People can heal and change, even if they were one way in the past. What I would just say is that if people are currently proudly talking this way, the way Sam and Thomas are like proudly talking about like physically threatening Devin, like that's a good sign. Like, all right, at least as of this moment, we're steering clear from dudes like this for dating purposes.
And what makes it even more painful is it's so specific to Jenn's wounds in dating. It's exactly that behavior. And I'm thinking about it. Other bachelorettes, Charity would have never stood for this. I think she would have cut all of them out. And that just kind of speaks to, you know, what she was looking for in a relationship versus how Jenn is right now, where she's outgrowing these behaviors. And maybe there is something about her being more interested in guys that are representing that.
On the note about the Devin like weight conversation, I will say, you know, I did appreciate Devin opening up about this and getting vulnerable. I loved seeing that more vulnerable side of him, and I like that he shared that with Jenn. I do think that it like really resonated with her. I'm glad that they were able to kind of bond on that level. I will say I didn't completely love the conversation. You know, he opened up about the fact that he used to be heavier. He didn't really love how he looked. He didn't like looking at himself in the mirror, and he said he like worked really hard to change that. Sounds like kind of a very classic, like, I lost weight and I became happy kind of story. And I don't know. I think we gotta be really careful with these types of conversations about being fat or being heavier in your past, because I do think that sometimes the way these conversations are positioned, it often positions being fat as like some tragic backstory, which it isn't. Like, it makes it sound like, oh my gosh, being fat was so horrible, like it's such a problem, and like that's the reason I was so sad back then. He basically said I was fat and I didn't like it. Basically the message was being fat is bad or unattractive, right? And it's so tough to have that kind of message, especially in a franchise that we know has really just historically never has ever had people with bigger bodies represented whatsoever. And so it's just, you know, we always see the same body type for women and basically the same body type for men. And, you know, we just had this whole conversation around Brett, who we were so sad to see him leave after night one. And so I was a little just disappointed in this conversation. I don't blame Devin for it. It's not like it was like Devin, like this is Devin's experience, and like Devin is just sharing his emotion, like his feelings around this thing that happened, you know, thing that he experienced. But you know, on one breath, we're like so excited to have bigger bodies on our screen and getting love, and then in the next, we're being told that having a bigger body is a source of shame and is unattractive and unlovable. And so like these messages is just like such a whiplash. And for me, I'm just a little tired of having fatness being positioned as a tragedy. I'm just a little tired. Yeah. I don't want to invalidate Devin's experience. I just think it's really important to be really clear in these conversations that being fat is not actually the thing. That's not actually the problem. Being fat is not the thing that makes people miserable. Fat stigma is the thing that makes people miserable, right? It's being discriminated against and judged and made to feel like you are less than by others, by society. Those are the things that are going to impact your self-esteem and your body image and your self-worth, right? Being fat shouldn't actually make you hate the way you look in the mirror. And like, fat people are beautiful and hot and attractive. I mean, we literally just saw, like, everyone was so excited about Brett being on our screen, this like big old boy, and like everyone was very excited about him. So it's not the fatness that was the problem. It's the way people treat you when you are in a bigger body that is the problem. And there is research that shows this. There is some nuance here that we just need to have when we're talking about bodies, body positivity, fat positivity. It's like part of that is also changing the way we're talking about this. And we need to stop equating fatness with, or like having a bigger body with being a sad, unlovable person. So not a dig on Devin, not a dig on his experiences, but I kind of want a different type of conversation, to be honest. I just think that the way this was told, like being fat is bad, once I became skinny, I was happy. I just think that narrative is overall, honestly, just detrimental to social narratives about our bodies. That is actually what contributes to so many young people having the experience that Devin did, is this exact storyline. And so I just wish we could progress these conversations a little bit, but I did appreciate him being vulnerable, talking about his body image issues and talking about that with Jenn. I do think it was a growing moment for them. Clearly it meant a lot to her. So that would be my one thing about that scene.
But what I'm really happy is that by you taking an opportunity to highlight this conversation is progressing the conversation further. The show wasn't able to do it because the show is, let's be real, they haven't been the best track record in standing up for inclusivity and being extremely progressive and reflecting a reality that is 2024 and not 1990s like rom-coms, which I feel like they kind of live a little bit in. But the way that you presented that, I think, was really beautiful, because this has been something we've been calling for more of in the franchise. We want more body positivity. And these stories, okay, like, I understand that Devin wanted to get closer to Jenn, and it's a very real, valid experience he had.
Right.
And I just hoped that it could go one step deeper, where it calls for it. Yeah, it just is like, okay, and I don't feel bad about it, and this has changed, and I accept it. You know, like, there's just there's that little piece that's missing in the conversation, and that piece is what changes the zeitgeist. It changes the narrative to be accepting and empowering. So I just really appreciated the way that you laid that out. That was beautiful. By the way, come find us on Instagram. We're posting more quick takes, behind the scenes of filming, and after hour thoughts on the latest Bachelor Nation relationship news. It's a really fun way to stay connected, and you can always DM us about what you're excited to hear us talk about after any episode. We hope to see you there.
We should talk about Jenn's relationship history a lot, because I feel like in this episode we got a lot more details about just exactly what she means when she says she used to be in a ton of toxic relationships, right? Like, a lot of her history came up. Specifically, actually, it was in the race car date where I feel like we were starting to learn more, because she had that smaller group of men. There was just 4 guys on that date. So in the after party, she really felt like she went really deep in with each of those guys. I mean, the types of things she was bringing up, I was like, it was like one thing after the other. My brain was like, whoa. She was talking about never having had a partner love her the right way ever. She felt like none of her partners have ever actually loved her. She talked about how she felt like she used to have to put on a front, and if she had bad days, her partners would penalize her or run away from her, or she wouldn't be accepted if she was having bad days. And she said something about feeling she wouldn't get comforted if she wasn't perfect. I think she actually maybe said this to Devin later on. I can't remember. But we were getting so many visceral details. One thing she said too was she felt like she had to dim down her accomplishments. She felt like she had to make herself smaller, and she was put in this box and couldn't be her full self with her partners. Damn, there were some really wild stories she was telling. And then one thing she mentioned to Hakeem was I think Hakeem was talking about having a broken family, and I'm just putting that in air quotes because that was the language that they used, but having a family where maybe their parents weren't together. And I think she mentioned because she didn't have love from a father, she feels like that might be why she was looking for love in the wrong places. So I was like, whoa, there's so much to unpack here, so many different really difficult experiences it sounds like that she has had in her past relationships. I'm so curious, Julie, what you were making as all of this was coming up. And she was even getting emotional talking about a lot of it with these different men. It was quite a lot.
It was, and I felt like it was really the first time this season that she really opened up about it, and it was she was making shape of it, changing the narrative, and being in the story at the same time. So it's a really intense experience for her, because being on the show is a pressure cooker. The way that you frame your story talks a lot about the way that you've been able to learn and heal from it, and she's still in active conversation with it. And I think as she's around each man and each date, she's saying, okay, they say this, I can share this, I'm kind of mapping this out in my mind, I'm kind of figuring out what this all means. So I can see why she might be feeling quite overwhelmed, and how it would be very confusing to be in a group of 25 men and to say the words, I trust myself, I can discern that I can pick the right people. And I think as a viewer, the heartbreaking side of that is I know that she's saying those things, and there's a part of her right now that's just kind of a little bit more attracted to those men in the house. And I do think that will change because she's so staunch about it. But it was really sad to see, oh my God, Sam M is the exact kind of guy you shouldn't keep around. And I felt really sad for Jenn, and I felt like she is definitely at the very early stages of this discovery for herself. I don't know if she's ready to be engaged, if I'm being totally honest, and I'm not saying it out of a question of readiness. It's a question of time. It takes time to really deepen into this knowledge of yourself, and time to develop these skills. You brought this up about a bridge relationship. And it does seem like maybe the person she chooses could be that bridge relationship for her person later on in life, because I have been in her shoes years before I met the person I want to marry, and where I was then was not choosing the kind of partner that I would choose now. It was a much different choice. It was a much different conversation. It was earlier on. So that was kind of what I was feeling from her, because I was like, ooh, like your picker, you're still like strengthening the signals, but when it's on, it's like picking up the wrong guys, you know? But she's like trying to like instruct it differently. She's like, pick a nice guy, but she's like, that one. And then she's like pulling in a jerk. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. You know, you bring up a really good point that there is something to being able to have already processed your story such that you can kind of coherently explain it to other people, and like it's like you have spent enough time with it, understanding it, seeing how it's all connected and making sense of it, and how it impacts how you're showing up today, such that you have this like narrative or this story that is it is kind of, not that it has to be like wrapped up neatly with a bow, but it's like you have a bit of a sense of what it all means, what you've been through, and how to explain it to other people. And I did feel like, you're right, like different pieces of stories were coming up with these different people, and there's a lot of themes, like a lot of different themes that was there about like the different ways that she was interacting with partners, different ways that she kind of lost herself in these relationships, or, you know, allowed herself to accept behavior from men that was unacceptable, you know. And it does seem like she even kind of said something along the lines of like, I guess I do need to rehash what I've been through. Like, I guess I do need to like talk through it. I'm like,
I was like, Jen, yes, you
indeed.
do. Yes, you're on the right track. I was like, keep going. Don't stop.
Yeah. So I did have a similar feeling of like, it's not that I think that she's not ready. Like, I know that she wants it. She knows that she was in, you know, unhealthy relationships. She knows what she deserves, but I do think that there is a level of unpacking that maybe hasn't happened yet. And, you know, one thing that I have been really recognizing from this episode, I mean, this was true in Joey's season too, but definitely in the last, like, in these episodes of Jen's season, what I'm really picking up on is Jenn really is not good at feelings. Like, she's not great.
I get it, girl.
Like, she's not great at talking about her own feelings. She's not good at empathizing with other people's feelings. It's like, she just isn't, that's just not her forte. And that's no dig on her. It's okay. Like, some people are just a little bit more, got their fingers in it a little bit more than others. And, you know, Jenn has had these, like, really painful experiences, both her family, like with her family, and things that have happened within her family dynamics, and in her relationship. She's had tons of really intense experiences, and it doesn't seem like she has really quite processed all of that just yet. And like, I was even like, when on the one-on-one date with Spencer, like, you know, he was opening up about cheating.
I'm glad you're
like
saying this.
Yeah. He opened up about like he was engaged, and then that his fiance, he found out she had been cheating. He doesn't even really know the full extent of it, and it was like a very emotional story. It was very sad, and she heard that story, and she was immediately like, okay, but are you scared of getting engaged? Like, she did nothing to comfort that man. It was so funny.
My jaw was dropped.
She didn't try to empathize with him at all. She just kind of like redirected it back to her own insecurities, her own concerns, right? She really wasn't able to be present with him at all in his emotions. And that reminded me of the Marcus thing from week 2. In her Marcus one-on-one date, she also couldn't really be there when Marcus was opening up about his like war experiences. Like, she was just like, they're there. That was kind of it. And so I do think that she is still a little bit new to emotions, just in general. Like, that is just not something that she has a ton of experience working with. Not that she hasn't had the emotional experiences, but she hasn't really practiced unpacking it all and being with her emotions, being with other people's emotions. And that's something that is just so important in relationships. So it does, I'm with you, it makes me a little bit concerned for her. Not that she can't learn it. Maybe she'll find the right guy in this group of men who will, like, the two of them together will practice these skills, and like they'll be able to do it. Like, maybe that's Devin. I'm like, Like, the two of them did get emotional one or two different times in this episode. They kind of did get into their feelings in a way that seemed accessible to Jenn, and, like, it totally worked. So maybe she can find someone in this group, and they'll be able to kind of work through this and figure this out together. But I had the same instinct as you, Julie. I was just a little bit like, I don't know if Jenn has... It's not that she doesn't have experience, but there is, like, some level of processing that she hasn't done yet that I think is pretty important to show up and create your healthiest relationship.
You bring up so many good points that I'm like, oof, which thread do I pick up and where do I start? Because the coherence that you said with her emotional story, there's no denying that she's been through really tough experiences. There's no denying that, of course, she has felt every single emotion that has come to her. The distinction is, has she been able to not only feel her emotions, process them, but to develop this new language of, okay, this is how, like, I feel really connected to my body, and I, like, really trust myself, and I really trust the way that I'm moving, because this is where our emotions are. Like, our emotions are transient. They are not true about who we are forever. It's just about what's happening in the situation. And when we internalize it and we're able to process it in a healthy way, we can use it as a map and a guide. It teaches us the boundaries. It teaches us the way that we show up with people. It teaches us, okay, like, if I'm feeling mad in this situation, my boundary has been crossed, and I can speak up for myself and I can get out of it. Like, this is how you can use your emotions. It's not just processing it internally. It's really about, how can I be in relationship with myself and other people in a way where I don't get hurt the way that I've been hurt before. And a lot of her emotions, we are really attracted to what's familiar. There's, like, a term, I speak about it on the show. It's called repetition compulsion. We feel compelled to fix something because we've experienced it again. Like, if she has been in a home with a toxic marriage, her parents demonstrating that, there may be a compulsion for her to find herself in that narrative to break the pattern, because her brain is trying to, like, complete something. There's something that doesn't feel right, so then she's just going to keep getting in the same narratives again and again. So what I'm seeing of Jenn is that the coherence or the decoherence of what's happening, there's all of these, like, disparate stories. She's like, okay, there's this connection that I'm sensing. There's toxicity. I'm sensing that, like, I wasn't being treated well. Where she's at in her journey now is, I'm not going to not be treated well. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I trust my voice, and I trust my power. The next part in that journey is the practice. It's the embodiment. It's, like, the reflection with a partner, and then it's, like, eventually it just becomes a part of who you are. That speaks to, like, earned secure attachment, which is a really popular theory about how you can change your attachment system as an adult. There's all of these things that you can do to, regulate yourself. So she's on that path. And what I'm seeing is a little bit of the part that she is still figuring this out, and the show is gamified. And the way that she's able to get into conversations with these men, it's not in the way where she can really practice this story. It's a little bit more of her finding her story and finding people that can support this new narrative. And Devin seems to do that. I think Devin said something that really spoke to her, that it reminded me a little bit of, because I kind of think of Joey as this example of, I kind of want Jenn with a Joey. I felt like Joey from the last season, he was really able to, he was kind of the perfect bachelor for her. He was very emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
He, really sat in he asked her questions. He sat still. He was attracted to her, but he didn't lead with it. I felt like he was more speaking about, wow, I think she's such a cool person with depth. That's maybe a different compliment than Jenn's used to, because she is a smoke show. She is really attractive. So I'm sure that maybe that's what people tend to gravitate towards. And I felt like when Devin said, I'm going to stand in front of you, and I'm going to take all of the knocks, and I have your back. I did see something in Jenn that really, she felt it, like, cracked open a little bit of her discovering, oh, that's what I want that to feel like. And this is my theory, but I do feel like she is a body-oriented person. We all are, but there are some people that are very physically connected to their bodies and they trust their gut, and her gut is very strong, and she's, you know, she's really working on getting it to be this really big sounding board of wisdom. So I felt like when Devin spoke to that, she was like, ooh, this is another piece of adding to the story. I want a man to feel like this, and now I know this, and I'm not going to back away from it. Like, she's kind of like mapping out everything right now, and it's sad because when she's with Sam M, she's like, I think it's so easy for her to be in that state of being flirty and seductive and keeping the excitement going and pumping up, but I kind of liked seeing the conversations that she was attempting to have with some of the men, because when I saw the Spencer date, I was a little bit shocked by the progression. He was like, I was cheated on. She was like, well, what does that mean? Are you ready? And he was like, of course, of course I'm ready. But I felt like they were not talking about themselves. They were talking about how they would be in relationships, which to me doesn't feel like a real connection. It just feels like somebody trying to like pump up a connection, you know, like, ooh, this is how I'd be in a relationship versus this is how I'd be for you. There's not a lot of showing. It's a lot of telling. So I don't know. I saw that when she gave him the rose and she was like, I think we really opened up to each other. I was like, okay, she's trying. She really is trying. She's trying to open up. She's saying the words. She's staying in the feeling. She's thinking about how to map it out. But that did bring up, you're right, the question of, I think she wants to be ready, and she will be for this relationship. I think this relationship will teach her a lot. Whoever she chooses would teach her a lot. That was kind of my big takeaway from her this episode was, okay, I get it. I was there. I was also like in my mid-20s dating the wrong people. I get it. Yeah. Trying to figure myself out.
Absolutely. I mean, oh my gosh, Julie, you bring up so many good points. When you were just talking about repetition compulsion, I like literally had tingles in my body. I was like, oh no. That is exactly what's happening. I know this feeling. Oh God.
I know. I saw Jenn and I was like, no. It's like a slow motion no. Like, don't do it.
I know. There's that meme, I don't know if you've seen it, of like people like banging on a door to their like younger selves, like in a bad relationship, and like that is what it feels like watching this. I'm like, no, don't do it.
Don't kiss him.
Oh, that is what it feels like. But I'm with you. I kind of think she is going through a process right now, and I kind of think she can get through it.
She can get through it.
She's gonna do it. I think she is. The question is, will she do it in this process, in this setting? I guess we'll find out. I'm not totally sure, especially because I'm not like the most excited, to be honest, about any of these guys. None of them is showing even like, you know, a tenth of the emotional intelligence of Joey. Like, no one is showing that like beautiful ability to be empathetic and sit with feelings and like really get into them. Not a single one of these guys has been showing that. Now, that doesn't mean none of them have it, but at least so far, we just haven't seen it from any of these guys, not really. And so I am a little concerned about, it's like the combination of Jenn's like kind of newness to kind of going through this process of understanding what has happened to her and her feelings and what she needs, and kind of growing her intuition, growing and like mapping out like what it is that she needs in order to not end up in relationships that were like the ones that she had. She's going through this process, but she's doing it with these guys who I'm like, oh!
Yes. I know. And it's so, and I do think that's what could make her story so beautiful, because I have full confidence that she will, you know, she is, it was really interesting when Aaron was like, people are not here for the right reasons. And I saw so much personality from Jenn. Her voice kind of changed. She was a little bit like, she got really angry. She was really definitive, because this is her big focus right now. She's like, I'm not choosing somebody that treats me like that. And it was really incredible to see that motivation, because her story will represent that objective. She will complete that objective. She has a lot of ferociousness for the
Yeah, she
tagline of the
does.
season. She has a lot of fierce, fire energy of like, this is not going to happen to me. So I really do believe we will see her. I guess like I was going to say choosing a good person. I would say I would see her choosing herself and choosing a version of herself that will give her everything that she needs in her life. Yeah, she'll find exactly what she's looking for, and that's her at the end of this journey. I don't know if I see of any of these guys quite yet. We could be surprised. It's only episode 3, but I don't remember ever disliking the men this much.
I know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Or does this happen? I can't remember.
Usually there's a few guys that you're excited about. I mean, I will say we should briefly talk. Is there anyone that we like? There is one guy. The one guy that I like is Dylan, who is not getting any attention from Jenn. He's getting some screen time, but she's really not paying much attention to him whatsoever. But he's being so cute and fun and friendly and nice and he was on his little striptease date. He just had such a good energy. He was coming out of his shell, because the previous episode he talked about being like a little bit like more soft spoken or a little more shy, a little bit like quieter, and I liked seeing that kind of vulnerability from him. So I was like, okay, we got the vulnerability, check. We can talk about we're humble, we can talk about like the things that we struggle with, check. He's cute, check. And then on this date he had a little bit of that fun, like kind of outgoingness. He was able to like roll with it here. That's what Jenn likes, check. So I was like, man, this guy's great, but she's literally not giving him the time of day. So it's just, I like him. I just don't think she's at all interested. At least from what we're seeing. I think they did kiss once, maybe, but it's nothing. It's just the only person really getting any attention is Devin, and then I guess Sam. So
the loudest guys in the group, which says something to her, because she loves these extroverted energies that take control. Unfortunately, they're taking control of her season in certain ways because they just take so much attention. I will say, if I had to pick a standout, he went home, but I loved Hakeem. Hakeem's sweetness was so endearing, and he felt genuinely sincere. It's hard to communicate that level of sincerity on TV, but I did genuinely feel like he had admiration, feelings of attraction, excitement for Jenn. He really adored Jenn. He really wanted to connect with Jenn, and he really showed up. Like, he conquered his fears in Australia of like the bugs, and he did all of these things to kind of show up and try his hardest. And when the guys were getting in a fight, his eyes were just super big on the sofa, and his talking head was like, oh my god, I just really want to get time with her. I need to tell her how much I really care about her, and all of these things. And that's the energy that I want for somebody that ends up with her. This really sweet, really sincere, very like it's a very simple truth, like, I'm here for you and I feel that from you, and it's not complicated. All of these other characters are quite complicated. I'm starting to like Devin more, but it feels complicated because of his earlier fights with everybody. But with Hakeem, it just felt like a singular truth. This is a guy that's here for you, and he wants to get to know you, and there's some commonalities. So I wish that she was more attracted to the Hakeems, the Dylans of the group. I don't see it, though. So
Jenn,
I
know. Oh, my baby girl.
I know. Let's see how things go. Like, the next episode seems kind of intense. Somebody else shows up, and that's gonna cause even more mayhem in her emotional world. I'm just like thinking about her just like mapping out all of these stories in her head, right? And it's like, on a show like this, you have to do it on it's hard mode. It's definitely a challenge. She can navigate it, but let's see who she ends up picking. It will tell us a lot about what she's looking for in a relationship right now.
Let us know down below what you all think of both that we have been kind of exploring related to Jenn's relationship history in this conversation and how it's impacting her decisions. Let us know down below what you think of the men, if there's anyone sticking out to you that could be a good fit for the journey that Jenn is on and trying to figure out. Is there anyone here that you are excited about? Let us know down below. I am very curious, and if anyone has any like stories or experiences to share related to like what Jenn is going through, because I think we've all been through versions of this, or a lot of us have been through versions of this, right? And like trying to like kind of figure out, why did these past relationships go so poorly? What do I need to do? What needs to be different? What are these feelings that I've had? What are the dynamics that I'm being pulled into? Where are they coming from? And like what needs to be different? How do I integrate this all into my story and how I'm moving in my relationships? How do I do that? And how do I practice these skills, practice being in those feelings, practice being able to kind of do the new way of doing it, the new way of forming attachments with people? How do I do that with a person who is gonna be able to support me in this endeavor? I think we all go through, not all, many of us go through a version of this process, and yeah, I would be curious if anyone resonates or has anything to share to add more context to this conversation, because I think it's very relatable, to be honest.
Oh, great question. I love that. I can't wait to see what everybody thinks below. I've been there, obviously. That's why I'm just like rooting for her to just find a person that can really meet her where she deserves to be met at. And that is a radar that she is fine-tuning in real time for all of us to see. And that's such a different Bachelorette season or a Bachelor season, right? To just see this really active conversation with herself happen in real time.
Absolutely. You know, actually, that when you said that just reminded me of, this was one of the things that we had thought about Jenn prior to her becoming the Bachelorette. When she had, I think she, in the Women Tell All of Joey's season, she came up on the stage just to have like a hot seat conversation. We didn't know she was going to be the Bachelorette, and she was opening up about like how the process of being on the show and starting to unpack her story has already been impacting how her relationships with her family members. And there has been this like movement in her story already, from kind of never really talking about it ever with anyone to now being able to kind of open up to these different family members about kind of what they've been through as a family, and starting to like bring those emotions to the forefront to have discussions about it. And it feels like there was some kind of movement that happened during Joey's season for Jenn. There was some kind of like progression in understanding her story and starting to integrate it into who she is, and be able to like really look at those emotions more closely. And something like this did already happen in Joey's season. That was part of why I was so excited about Jenn. I was so excited to see someone who is actively in that process of, you know, growth, a huge emotional journey is like unfolding for her. And we did see the like little kind of seeds of that in Joey's season, and now it's like really like tearing open here in Jenn's season. We're really seeing like all of it is happening in real time, and it's kind of cool to have a Bachelorette season that's kind of about that. I'm kind of excited to see how her story is gonna open up. And you're right, I have confidence. I think she'll figure it out. I think she's gonna be going through these, you know, I think it's going to be difficult, especially if her ex is showing up next week. It's going to be a whole thing, but I'm kind of excited to see how she moves through it, and I think it's going to open up some really good conversations for us as well. So it's a good season so far. I'm kind of excited about it. The men, I'm a little bit whatever about, but Jenn's story, I'm very excited about that part of it.
Exactly. After we've had this conversation, because I'll be real, when I saw the episode last night, I was like, oh man, this sucks. The guys suck. But I was like, my real thoughts, but I was like, wait, if this is really a story about Jenn finding herself and her connecting to herself deeply, then it's really fun to watch. It's so different. It's so empowering. It's so rich. There's so much meaning to it. Like, if you captured what I was like when I was dealing with that type of narrative building in Jenn's shoes, I think it would have been a little bit confusing and haphazard and a lot of left turns, but you're always on the right path. You're always on the right path. And with your family members who really are getting to know Jenn deeper, and herself being rooted in herself in a confident way, it'll anchor her, and I feel really good about where she's going.
Yeah. Ooh, okay, this ended up being such a good conversation. I loved it.
I know. I was like, where are we going? I don't know.
Here we are.
Did not think we're going to talk about this. Yeah, I'm glad we landed here.
If you've watched this point in the video and you are not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We do this every single week. We recap every single episode of every season of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. We will be back next week for week 4 of Jenn's season. It looks like a juicy one. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with this like ex showing up situation. We will definitely be going all the way into it. So subscribe and we will see you over there.
Bye.
Bye.